So, Mr. Leonard is about to take us through his presentation about bench running. Very, very important. If you're doing anything, 200, 400 hurdles, relays, all of them, all and above. So, without further ado, I will hand you over to Mr. Mike Leonard.
Okay. Good evening, all. Yeah, and thanks for joining me again for another Wednesday speed webinar. As Shani just mentioned, obviously Ben running for 2s, for 4s, for 4 hurdles for the relay. If you're a good Ben runner, certainly helps the relay coaches, first and third legs, being flexible on those terms. So that's another aspect to bear in mind. Obviously thinking about the principles, which obviously I'm gonna go into in a moment. Going to concentrate on the 200 meters, but the principles are the same for the 4 and the 4 hurdles. Obviously some differences in terms of the velocities at the start, obviously with the hurdles as well, with positionings, etc. And as I say, the velocity, you're trying to get into the right positions to sight the hurdles, to get over the hurdles. So they're the differences, but primarily, you know, the principles are the same. The physics is still the same. And you know, I have unfortunately got a little bit of physics for you. Going to try and for the first sort of half of this, look at some of the technical aspects, and then some of the tactical stuff. You know, how do you run a 200 meters, and some ideas about how to actually execute the race. Different ideas, some of them possibly a little bit off the wall, but their theories are out there. We've come across them, so you know, interesting to actually discuss them, even if people say, well, you know, yeah, that's crazy. No. I think, you know, you know, interesting to think about that. Somebody just put a middle distance bend running. Again, the principles, I suppose, are the same. Obviously, depends on what pace you're doing. So yeah, you know, you're going to have to adapt things for that. But yeah, the physics is the physics. So what are we up against? Centrifugal force. If you think about, obviously, when you're driving, you're going in a straight line, you try and take the corner, anything loose is going to start drifting to the outside. Basically, unless a force acts on a body to change its direction, it'll keep going in that direction. So to counteract the centrifugal forces, which really is, you know, the default position, you just keep going. You got this idea of centripetal force. That's what you're trying to really generate to counteract the centrifugal forces that are pushing you out. I suppose you think hammer throwers, and the force that they're trying to counteract. Obviously, you know, really sort of leaning away from the hammer, getting that momentum as it's going, and the object, in this case the hammer, is going to go straight as soon as they release it, and that centrifugal force will then operate. So you're trying to counteract that, as I say. So Yeah, something's going to keep going in a straight line until a force operates on it. I think that's another one of Newton's pieces, isn't it? I think he came up with quite a lot. So you need these forces to counteract that. One way of doing that is a lean. Again, obviously the analogy of motorbikes going around corners, going a lot faster than just a human running. But here, thinking of leaning away, leaning inside to try and keep that path turning, but not from the engine, from the waist. You see people, just lopping over at the waist. You're going to want to lean from the ankle, yeah. So that it's the whole body that's going to be leaning in. Force creates speed around the bend, then is going to be more difficult to attain and to maintain. And on that thought, what I've done, and I'm happy to afterwards, if people email me, emails at the end. Harry King sent me a link for a PhD thesis that somebody did at University of Bath, which came out in 2012, and I've taken some thoughts from there and your findings from there. Haven't read it all as yet. It's 200 pages worth or thereabouts, but some really sort of good findings coming out of some of the research that Lady Sarah Churchill did within this PhD. Talking about the left stride and the left foot contact here being a significant increase in contact time, and therefore obviously reducing the frequency of the stride. Here, I think if you think of the foot strike, some of the force that any individual is generating is lateral. Again, you're trying to keep within that path, keeping within that lane, and to do that, some of the every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I always tell my athletes that's the one bit of physics I know. So the lateral force is going outwards in the lane, which is keeping you inwards. A lot of good work about that left stride, I think, as I say, in that paper, which if you email me, I can send the link to you. Obviously it's copyrighted and whatever, so you've got to be careful on some of that. On the right side then, decreasing in stride length and then a decrease in flight time as well. That was another finding from there. So as you can see, the dynamics all changing. I think it's one of these things that, yeah, you're slower going around the bend. Everyone knows that. It's logical, but why? The scientists, I suppose, are always asking why, aren't they? And this is some of the reason. It's differences in forces. The contact time then is longer. All of these sorts of things that are going to have an impact on going around the bend and keeping that pace. Mention the right arm there. Again, part of the thing to keep you on that path of the right arm coming across the body more than it would, to a midline kind of position. Again, as I say, to keep you on that path around the bend. So what do we actually see? Body positions. I mentioned sort of hinging at the waist. That's going to throw your the mechanics completely, really, because what else, of course, it's going to do is down the bottom there is this idea of galloping, where you've got the real restriction on the inside leg, and the other one roaming free. And if there's too much of an imbalance there, you do see people going into some kind of an uneven galloping motion. Acceleration depends how you're going to execute the race mind. I think we're going to look at some of the models there, and it'd be interesting to see what people think of as the optimum way to run it. I've always got something in my mind, which I tell my athletes, knowing obviously there are other ways, but I've got an ideal blueprint in my mind, which obviously I'm gonna mention as we go through. The other thing, head positioning, the idea of people starting to run here with a head here, and the other thing with that is looking down at the finishing line. Again, we all know walking, driving the car. If you're driving the car straight, you start looking over there slightly, and you start drifting inwards. Yeah, so that's what's gonna happen. You haven't got that much leeway within the lane. You haven't got to worry about have to worry about changing direction because you're not looking in the right place. So don't look at the finish line. Look ahead of you and gradually come round. The arms, again, if there's too much of a lean from the waist, you're hinging there. The left arm starts really not getting very much range at all. It is more of a less of a wider range, but you don't want to suffocate it, as a sort of term there. You want to keep that flowing, keep it quick, and yeah, get rid of any unusual sort of body lean, etc., to be so that you're not restricting that the motion. Some of the factors, obviously, thinking of executing the race, more speed equals more speed reserve. I think the concept of speed reserve has been out there for a little while now, and the faster you can go, if you're sub that, then the more energy you're going to keep in reserve for when you need it. All of these aspects. So obviously an element of all of that comes into play here. Single track runners, double track. Mainly, I think everyone's sort of running in left foot and right foot in parallel. You can get people who go into a single track. If you think about the analogy's got to be speed skaters. So you got left foot down, right foot coming across in front of the left foot. So you're in this sort of single track. Again, going to help you stay on track. Stay in the path around the turn. Positioning: inside, middle, outside. we'll look at a little bit of that. I've got a few videos to show you. Obviously, the shortest different distance is the inside of the lane. Don't want to go obviously right on the line. 6, 12 inches. Some would say 18 inches. You want enough leeway so that you don't actually step on the line. Lane 1, you might want the outside of the lane. Instead, again, the tightness of the bend might, you might find it more comfortable on the outside of the lane. There are times where you might want to change your positioning within the lane, and you might see some of that again on the video that I've got to show you. Excuse me. Here, I think, when you think about lanes and obviously the sort of point at the bottom about which lane is best. The radius is going to have an effect, obviously. So lane 1 is tighter than lane 8. The quickest one on that basis is lane 8. Everyone wants, but not everyone wants lane 8. Obviously, psychological factors come into play. People like to see people outside of them, which is one aspect of it all. The other thing to mention is if you're thinking about the elite athletes, especially the men, sub 20 seconds for the 200. It's a slightly different ball game for them going around the bend to the a 12-year-old girl who weighs next to nothing does the 200 meters in 30 seconds or whatever. They're going to have a much more comfortable time running in lane 1 than whoever, one of the elite people. Height, taller athletes, higher center of mass. Again, they're going to find it, or can find it more difficult. I've said sometimes there, and Charlie, me and Charlie were talking about it as well. And you still can do it. Bolt one bad around the bend. So it's just all of these sort of considerations to have in mind. Right and wrong answers. Yeah, there are very few. I think it's getting into it, really knowing what some of this, and then trying it out. Horses for courses. So I think use our advert and I think all the webinars that I've done and I've delivered, I've attended as well. I think nowadays there's much more emphasis, and certainly when I started over here on the technical side of things. Obviously, sports science is moving on all of the time. So improving the technical execution is paramount. Needs to always be done, and that's going to render you great gains in your program. So I think this is the big one of the takeaways. Sort out your technical stuff. Obviously, physical preparation is got to go hand in hand and whatever. But so they need to be strong enough to execute the technical aspects. But it's so important to get some of that right. And thinking about Ben running, I don't know about you, but having looked at some of this again, um, I don't do enough. I don't do enough of the specific stuff that is going to improve my guys and gals running efficiently around the bend. Um, some ideas coming up on that later on. Um, I think all of us, do 150 reps or 200-meter reps and whatever. Um, how many times do you really sort of think about, well, how are they actually running? How are they executing this bend or this part of the bend? What can we do to improve those aspects? To improve that, we can make some great gains around all of this. I think so mentioning the like the left stride and foot contact there again in this PhD, saying make sure it's a bit like the jumpers, make sure this is an active foot, even more so than normal, maybe, try and make sure that's coming as near to your center of mass as possible. Make sure it's active, it's coming back, which is going to help propel you forward. Because as I say, obviously part of the force is pushing you or trying to help stop you being pushed laterally and going on that straight path. That's something. I was at the track this morning, actually. Wanted to just try out a couple of the things that I'm going to mention later. With one of my athletes, videos of him I've actually got from previously. And yeah, interesting to see. He did a couple of runs. There was one. Then I said, right, try and think about that. That's your focus this time. Just think of that active left foot coming down, making sure it's not going forward as it hits the ground under you. Push it back, and he thought it was better. He seemed to be happy with that. He thought that next rep was better. So that's one aspect that I could throw in at that point. So yeah, improve stride length by creation of better ground forces. I say that aspects of the left foot. Then again, looking at that PhD, it was interesting. The left side obviously takes more of a hammering, if you like, trying to keep you on track. So if you can get that better propulsive force there, it's going to be better. Think obviously the produce process reactively and the zero energy cost of that dorsiflexion. Don't want to dwell on that. I think that most people are happy with that concept nowadays, and incorporating it in the technical model into all running sessions. Well, as I say, when I do reps around the bend, I don't necessarily think as much as maybe I should on some of those aspects. So that's a lesson for me as well. Any questions? Thanks, John. Yeah, I think again, these taller athletes, invariably with long legs, are going to find it more difficult going around the bends. Yeah, just something, yeah, you're going to have to work with and get better with. But yeah, it's a given, isn't it? But yeah, trickier. No, I got a habit of peering over you. You might notice I'm not supposed to do this. Look at the questions beforehand, and I spotted this and I'm thinking, yeah, not yeah, hadn't thought of that. I would have said no. I can't see that is going to particularly make a difference. I think, people are used to, they've got used to, so it's hopefully the unconscious competence of running that way round a bend. But if anyone else has got any thoughts on that, yeah, well, let me know. Let everyone know. Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the balance, um, isn't it? Say the more the lean. Again, we've got the videos sort of coming up. I'm advocating just a couple of degrees of lean. You don't have to overdo it. It will mess things up if you do too much. Cues. Um, I would. I Yeah. It's again. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think I would just get them to maybe keep their hips in the right place. Maybe look at their hips, keep them under, in line with your body, as opposed to pushing them out. That would be the one I go for, I think. Yes, yeah, I joke. Yeah, this is it. I think again, the variation is and the diminution, if you like, of the force is the element that is the lateral force. So the more obviously you can get of the vertical force, which will propel you forward, the better. Obviously, that's in physical preparation. That's also in the technical aspects, as I say, of maybe making sure you've got this foot actively coming back under your center of mass. So obviously the initial foot contact, and then coming back. But yeah, you're obviously right. Yeah, vertical forces are what's propelling you. No, no, I think there's probably a complication too far in some ways. Having said that, it'd be interesting to see whether anyone else does. Do you, Jordan? Do you use them, and how have you found them? If you have, I it's a mixture. It's in it's in the grand plan, if you like, in terms of obviously working on speed itself, working on the speed in endurance. Now depends what your definition of speed endurance is going to be. Obviously, in olden times, in not too long ago, really, thinking about 150s, 200s, or whatever as speed endurance. Now, 80s, whatever. So obviously planning some of those in, and into the special endurance side of things as well, where you haven't got as much pace, but obviously the endurance factors are coming in more. So it's balancing all of that. Won't get too detailed as to how I would put all that together, because that's a whole different thing, and maybe we ought to do more on the planning side. That's a hint to Shani, I think. So we've had some questions before actually we go on to the indoors. Have a Ben running video again that we saw before. Now here, before I started, have a look at just a couple of things here. Where are they all positioning themselves in the lane? How are they coming off the bend? You will see some variations there as to how they want to play that aspect. The idea of running through aggressively through the relay box, the starting positions as well. That's another thing.
L'altro fenomeno della velocità è Henry Carr, un atleta particolarmente dotato nel fisico che non solo è prima pista mondiale dei 200 metri con il tempo di 20 secondi e 2.
So here you can see some of the body positions. He's leaning in slightly.
Ma è un ottimo 400ista, tanto è vero che ha fatto parte qui a Tokyo della staffetta 4x400, vincitrice della medaglia.
And to be honest, he's more or less in the middle of the lane as he was coming around. Then he's coming a little bit inside there and then just going slightly back out. So middle of the lane, inside, back into the middle.
It's a fair start.
And Carl's got a great start.
He has already closed down on Ropes and De Silva. Carl Lewis does not have a world record.
And there can be a couple of these are difficult to see with the different shade as it comes down by this stand.
Topless of Greece in 5, France.
This one just shows off, I think, is that the Ukrainian colours possibly, where he's obviously angled his blocks to run his first 10 meters or so as a straight line, and to obviously do so, take the left hand back a little bit, and also need to sort of move the blocks back, a couple of inches based on what you would know where you would normally have them, because your mass is slightly nearer to the line.
No break in the echelon so far. Troy Douglas going well, and outside him is Panayotopoulos and Jolene Golding on the outside. Golding has run a very good bend. What a bend he ran! And this is a big improvement. Things have clearly gone well in the
Could just chase Golding. He ran a great first bend, didn't he?
They did. He put Golding under pressure, and what I always said Turner was going to be an outside chance, and he ran the better bend of the lot. But
oh yeah, that's his
That's
leg.
flown up underneath
his legs under.
Yeah. Oh, how cool is that?
Ah, listen.
He's a bit unsteady, but he's let him go. And Malcolm's gone away well, and so too is Golding. Malcolm and Golding going well, and Zakari.
The gold medal out here. It seems that what happened was he started to chase the Australian outside him. We can't hear. We got Doug Taylor right at the end of the picture here. You can't see the Australian, but the Australian outside him has gone really, really quickly. But Turner just was never in the race. Julian Golding, magnificent. just like
So
Christian
going
Malcolm,
quite
what's so
close
exciting about these
to the
two is
line,
they're both
as they're
floaters.
steady and don't
They're
step
both
on
they're
it.
not power athletes. They run with.
Close on him. Although Christian's
You've run a good bend there, John.
it's okay, but you know, I wanted to come off the turn first because I knew Julian.
I mean, I felt Alan Condon ran, I mean, as they say, the bend of history. He was out there and, you know, I thought if he could hold on to that, he would have won. Julian, I mean... Sorry?
This time they get away. Fairly even at the minute, but Marlon Devonish going very well indeed already up on Roseanne Griffin. It's Devonish and Kevin Little who've come off the bend. The best Doug Turner's going to run a very, very good bend in lane 8 as well, as indeed has De Silva of Brazil.
Inside the wind limit, but from this moment onwards, when he realised he was in trouble, and he did look beaten at this level,
quite close to
he
the,
came through,
the line
and he showed
there,
tremendous
and then
courage.
just drifting out as they come
Kevin
into
Little
the-
looked the man to be
into
controlling the race.
Golding, Devonish, Patton, Clay, Buckland, Bolden and Maybank, and they do get away first time, which is good. Now Kobe Miller's got that hard inside lane and he's being left at the moment because Julian Golding just beginning to pull away, but going well.
Away this time. Now then, who's got the start? No real break in it at all at the moment. Chambers is going well on the outside and Darren Campbell is running well, and so is Christian Malcolm in the centre there. Shervington going well too from lane 2. Time. Running scared a little bit on the outside lane. He couldn't see anybody inside him, possibly until about 50 metres from the finish. And certainly he would have known then that Marlon Devonish in lane 2 on the right-hand side of the screen was powering his way into the straight
that is
and then
quite
gaining
far
ground
out in the
on the man
in the lane. That time for most of the bend.
Lambert stays low, and already he's up on Adamweo
I think this
outside
is
him. Lambert's
Chris Lambert going off like a rocket.
blasting round that bend, and Julian Golding's having a good run as well in second place. But Lambert...
They get away this time. Golding quickly into his stride. Marlon Devonish also going well. Golding already up on John Regis. Doug Turner with a little bit of work to do. Alan Condon's run a good bend, but it's going to be Golding in the lead as they come into the home straight. Golding.
Good start, good evening, even break. And straight away, Shervington's gone off very quickly, the Australian, next to the outside. And it's Shervington leading, but he's being tackled now.
Yeah, we've got one particular clip here, which is Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price at the Pan American Games last year. This is a semi-final, so she looks pretty relaxed. But again, watch her coming off the bend. I think there's a good shot. This is a TV replay. She's in lane on the inside lane. So they're aiming for the apex of the bend, coming out just that little bit, aiming then into the apex, and then coming back out into the middle of the lane, getting that slingshot type effect. Now, if you think, well, okay, these are how the experts do it. Also got a clip of one of my guys. This is our home track in Milton Keynes. My athlete in the inside lane. He's around 6'4", so he's quite tall. Must have been 17 or so at the time here. So taller athletes can negotiate the inner lanes. Obviously, he's not doing 20-second pace, but he is a 22-second runner.
Let's go, Higo! Let's go, Higo!
The inside lane is in the middle of the lane there. Again, taller athletes want to come out a little bit and just to handle that bend a little bit easier. So there were some questions on the indoors. Obviously, bend's even tighter. You get these differences between the the stadium. So the NIA in Birmingham was very, very steep, really. You got that to contend with. Cardiff is quite tight. Lee Valley, you've got the problem of the last bend where there is a slight dip in the surface, and that can catch you out. That can throw you way inwards and take you out of the lane. So you've got to be careful of that. Now we're always talking, as you can imagine, between ourselves as to all of these webinars and different opinions and whatever. Shani was talking to me about an instance where she was talking to John Regis about how to run at one of the national championships. So what we wanted to do now is if Shani has got a clip of an NCAA race, and then maybe talk to you a little bit about the story with Phil.
Yeah, hello. So this is the NCAA indoors in last year, and obviously we know that the Americans have a crop of very, very talented athletes who do not play when it comes to the 200 meters. So we're going to focus on the athletes in lanes 5 and 6. They execute this race really well, but the difference between this lady Kennedy in lane 6, I want you to really focus on what she does coming off the last turn. There's a slow-mo afterwards, but there's a reason why she loses this race.
Yesterday, she won her heat, but she was just tight. She was chasing everybody else instead of just trusting her sprint execution and running looser.
Kayla White, North Carolina, second in the 60 hurdles a little while ago. She is in lane 5.
Huge personal best for her in the 60 hurdles. She has been a workhorse for North Carolina.
22.99, the time to beat for the title.
I like her already.
Kayla White and Kennedy Flanagan.
Kayla White got a fantastic start, just like her prelims yesterday. She got the fastest qualifying time of all the prelims, and now watch this.
22.96 yesterday. It's going to take that to win it. And at the tape, it is Kayla White. Kennedy Flannel tried to get by her on the outside. Looks like they hooked up arms a little bit. 22.66.
Here, stop it, just to explain, so we know what we're looking at for the slow motion. I was really fortunate back in 1999. Oh, show my age. The night before I ran the 200 at the British Champs indoors, John Regis said, come, let me take you around. And he walked me twice around the track, once in lane 6 and the other time in lane 5, to show me exactly where I needed to be within the lane at different parts of the race and where I needed to put my effort in. We didn't train on an indoor track at all during the winter. So every time we went to any competitions in Birmingham, it was like a shock to the system. So I was really, really lucky that he took me around and walked me around to show me what I needed to do. So he explained if I was lucky to be in lane 5 or lane 6, I needed to come out absolutely flat out for the first 50, round the turn, and kind of be 2/3 of the way, angle my blocks into the apex. So I was kind of 2/3 of the way towards the outside of my lane with my blocks. So just to try and straighten it out as much as possible. But the main focus, once I got out and up and running, so I drive out, is I have to go back into my drive to go down the hill. Now it's a hill in Birmingham. It really is a serious hill. So you have to navigate it. You can't stay too high because the ground is disappearing underneath you. So you have to, I'm not talking full bent double drive, but you have to literally pivot at your hips, boom, go forward and drive down the hill. We used to practice this, Donovan and Clarence, obviously in the winter we run up the hill, but in preparation for indoors we also do on a shallow incline, we run downhill, because it's an art to it, it's a skill that needs to be practiced if you're going to execute it well. Because we didn't have a track, we were at Greenwich Park instead. So you have to flat out, slice to apex, run down the hill, and then you have to steam, literally steam down that back straight. That's the straights are the parts where you can make the most ground. Also, halfway down that turn, take a deep breath. Now you're unconsciously breathing throughout the race. This is a conscious breath because you're about to go back into your drive up the second hill. So you again, boom, body weight forward just a touch, just to get your cadence and your turnover, so you can absolutely explode up the hill. It's like a differential. You're literally changing pace, and you go up round the turn. And then with everything you've got, you need to go back into your drive, because this is the point. This is what happens with Kennedy. I don't know if she didn't breathe or she was just trying too hard. Her shoulders, if you notice, went up to her ears and she got super tight. I think the commentator mentioned it. She was really tight and in her previous races, and she didn't learn that lesson to be down and keep so she could get full swing. And she was competing too much. So she didn't go down into her drive, she stayed too high. And the track, even though it's a pretty shallow track, went away from her, and she stumbled as well on top of the tight shoulders, so she had nowhere to go. And you can see her almost go into the other athlete's lane. I think that's Kayla in the black. So that she lost her potential, she panicked. So when you've driven down that second turn, second hill, basically you give it everything you've got through to the tape, and that's how I ran my indoor races. I'll show you the slow motion now.
That is a big improvement on the collegiate leader. 2280 was the collegiate leader, but more importantly, she is an NCAA champion.
And that's also a huge personal best for her in the black in the middle of your screen. She's got out. What you've got to do in this 200, you've got to sprint down that first curve and then hold it. Right here, accelerate. Root up the curve, hold your acceleration, and then re-accelerate off the curve. The sprint mechanics in the front and right side are huge right here. You've got to have great knee lift and keep your knees and ankles and hips right in front of you, second from the left in the all black.
Now I think Kennedy, if she had been able to control that second turn, she would have won that race, because she came so strong at the end. She almost came back past Kayla at the end. But that's with the 200, you must stay. It's almost like a swan. Like here is nice and elegant and nice and relaxed, and underneath is furious. Because especially when you're doing this in an indoors, you have 4 drives. If you're in the inside lane, those ladies that are in lanes 2, 3, and 4 will have had to really drive up round the turn, drive back down, back straight, drive back up, and down again. So it's a serious undertaking doing a 200 and doing it well. So hopefully that will help you guys if you're doing a 200 or coaching people to do a 200.
Thank you, Shani. Yes, much better to hear that from Shani than from me, I think, to get a champion talking about it. So I mentioned about the starts and angling the blocks, and Shani just mentioned it again. Then just with those sort of caveats to make sure, you know, your left hand comes back a little bit, so you're not twisting the body, and the blocks come back a little bit in total, because your mass is going to be slightly nearer the line if you don't. So executing the 200, few ways of doing it. first one here, you know, first 50, good reaction, come out, execute the drive phase, control the transition into your running. Now, how quick that is, again, can vary a little bit. I'm always advocating come out fast. Yeah, first 50 meters, very quick. Then this mid bend area, maintaining your speed there, and preparing for going fast around the coming out of the bend. So here I would always advocate, you know, coming down a couple of notches, literally, you know, a couple of percentage points if my guys are going flat out beforehand. If all of this is, you know, 95%, you've got to come into the bend, out into the straight quick. So again, it's this aggressive acceleration through the box. You saw the types of positioning that people were using, you know, maybe coming out and then hitting that apex to get the slingshot type effect. And to help with that, again, you know, a deep breath at the run by the steeplechase, the water barrier area. So from that position, accelerate through the boxes. Think about that apex of the bend and how you want to take that maximum velocity off the bend into the straight. The other thing big for me on 200 is this final 50 meters and to hold the technique. Too many people, I think, especially obviously the youngsters, start thinking about going faster. By definition, you're at maximum velocity, you're flat out. If you try and go faster, you will go slower, much slower. Everyone's going slower, but you'll go much slower because you'll tighten up. Kennedy was it in the 200 there, you know, trying to, you know, do too much and tense up. So hold the technique together. You will, in theory, then hopefully slow down less than your opponents do. A variation on a theme there, a more controlled start in that first 50. Talking about 80% effort for that part of the race. I think my first reaction here is that quick enough? I think people need to experiment and see what works for them. Did spot one clip on YouTube where Atto Bolden was talking about this is the way he used to run the 200, so this is good enough for him. Obviously the middle section of the race, then 50 to 150 maximum effort, and again, you know, think about the apex of the bend and how you're handling that, and then holding on to the maximum velocity to the finish line. Flat out all the way, is it a good idea? Maybe if your name is Usain Bolt or Michael Johnson. I think for mere mortals, that one is a difficult one to pull off, if not impossible. And this had thought about whether to actually put this in or no. There does seem to be a theory out there of really straightening things up, so you can see the black lines within the red lane there. So 20-25 meter stretches of straight running. Yeah. Trouble is, I suppose you then got to do some kind of angle to stop yourself going out of the lane and go off then in a straight line in a slightly different direction. How practical that is, I think, is the big question. You'd certainly need lots of practice at it. as I said before, really, it's horses for courses. I think different people are going to run things in slightly different ways. Obviously, some of the top guys running sub 20 seconds for 200 meters going around the bend is a slightly different ball game than a 12-year-old girl who weighs next to nothing, who is doing sort of 30 seconds for the 200 meters. So it's a different. You need to play by your strengths. Now we had a question here in a moment. A drill that you can do, rotational drill, trying to get the athlete to run in a circle, trying to withstand the forces that are being generated, the centrifugal forces. And we had a question here about the World Masters indoors, flat track, how to practice it. So Pat, yeah, I think if you can get the radius of the bends, do that drill on that radius and actually mimic the track, and I think that's the way to simulate that one. So I look forward to hearing how you get on with that one. So that's one thing that you can do to practice. Another thing that was mentioned earlier about using wickets, wicket drills on the bends. Personally, my first thought on that is it's a bit too much, a bit too complicated. But here, level of cones, splitting the lane in half, actually then guiding the athlete to use a particular portion of the lane, invariably the inside. But as you saw, obviously, so lane one, you might want to run on the outside of the lane so they could come the other side of the cones to practice. So obviously ways of actually practicing some of these aspects as we go through. I think some of the things here as well to mention before we before we close, and thinking about some of the things that come out of that PhD thesis that I looked at. The left stride is taking a lot of the issues on, if you like. So minimizing the distance, touchdown distance, as the left foot strikes. So that is the distance between the foot and the center of mass, or your hips. Try and reduce that. Try and stop the foot, going forward just before it lands. Making sure you've got an active foot. So maybe talk to some of the long jump coaches about what they do and an active foot strike on the board. That's going to have an effect on minimizing ground contact times, and obviously then the cadences. Also the recovering the right leg quickly, which again is going to help that left leg stride. One thing again is suggested within that thesis about doing plyometrics around the bend. So that can start getting quite specific, and some hopping and bounding, etc. Around there, and also frontal plane, working in the frontal plane and strength on that score. So how you're doing sort of left and right, going forward. Maybe looking at core stability, exercises such as lunges, etc. So considerations. Have a plan. That's the big thing, isn't it? How you're going to actually negotiate the bend, where you're going to be positioned within the lane, and experiment. See what works for you on your athletes. Think about this head and body position and the amount of lean, etc. How are you going to execute the race? Flat out all the way? You're going to run in straight lines? Or are you going to, fast hold, maintain that type of attack? So I think we've covered all the questions. I hope we did in the first installment of this, or the second. If not, if you've got any questions, obviously if you've got any comments or want to ask me for the link to that, which is the PhD I've been referencing, then please send me an email, and I'll happily send that on, answer any questions anyone has got. Thank you very much. We got there. We took two bites of the cherry this time, but hopefully you found this useful. Thanks very much.